So today we wanted to talk about working with our fears. Well, the 3-part workshop series is really working with our fears and learning to not so much overcome them, because I don't really think it's possible to just like not be scared or afraid of performance, but like to be able to work with them and then come up with like some tricks and tools to enhance our performance and art sharing experience, and to kind of like make space for uh, ourselves within. It'll make sense. But first, I guess like what we wanted to do is just like go around and talk about some of the things that we fear associated with performance or sharing our art. Like, what are some of the things that come up for us? Like, they can be related directly to it or indirectly, just to help guide the conversation.
Good. Before I perform, there's usually like a full day of anxiety just around like, am I gonna nail these parts? Like, do I have the songs memorized? Like, do I have the lyrics memorized? What do I need to bring? It's kind of like a fears checklist that I go through, but not necessarily like abject horror, just kind of like stuff that keeps me prepared or spurs on preparation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I get those too.
It's been a super long time since I've gone and done a show, so there's all these new fears now. Like, am I going to catch a virus? It's a big one.
Yeah, it's. I realized that too. It's like I kind of got to a place where I didn't have so many fears, and then since it's been so long, it's like this new, like, what does my voice sound like? Like, can I do this still? Like, it's weird. It's like this new space. And then also again, like, with COVID, also it's like, will the show even happen? Like this getting your hopes up for things and having them taken away. It's like this fear of that. It's really,
Yeah.
are people gonna come? What? Yeah, all this stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, that fear of cancellation has really been a tough one. It just happens so consistently for me. Like almost everything I try to do lately seems like COVID gets in the way and snatches it away. It's really taken the wind out of my sails, Hopefully a few things will happen and then it'll be like gain the momentum of like, oh yeah, this is real, or like I exist. I'm a real person. I am a performer. Hopefully those feelings will come back once things start happening again, but it's also like it's always going to be a little different now. It's always going to have that.
Yeah, it's interesting that like as a generalized fear, like the fear of it coming to an end, which I think like actually does just like hang on to every performance, really, like every time of like just knowing how fragile the situation like actually is in terms of like whether or not you'll keep getting the opportunity to perform. Because I know, especially when like I first started, like it's such a like it seems like such a mystery, like how the opportunity for a performance really comes about. And like even after doing this for this long in my life, like I'm still kind of shocked when there's an amazing opportunity for a performance that comes up. And honestly, even like a booking many, like when actually one turns out to be nice, it's just a weird miracle. And then sometimes when it turns out to be crap, like just the whole environment and situation just isn't like prepared for you being there. It's almost like more common, it seems,
You're saying it's more calming when what?
or not common, but common, like it's so common that that uh like I guess that the like whole situation is so fragile that we don't really like know when the next time will come around. Like if you don't do a good enough job, like will there keep being opportunities, or like uh the amount of like time it takes to invest into this kind of work, there just like has to be some kind of payoff in like a longer sense. And I think that those like longer form like terrors about all of the work like still do kind of sit as like more acute terrors every time that we do try to do the performance anyway. um and I mean all of this is just like making me think of this thing that Jerry would always sit us down and talk to us about when we first met him, which was he was like, the only reason I'm doing this with you is because this whole thing will stop one day, just like that. I promise. He's like, I've been doing it for long enough and I've seen that happen enough times. And like, if any, he's like, if like, he's like, go ahead, go for it. Like, go and get the chances to do that. But like, if your sense of self becomes connected to whether or not these opportunities show up or don't, like they just won't. And like he would always like it just makes me think of that this thing that he would always talk about that I think is also connected to this like scary part of all this work, is that music won't take care of you. Like music actually just doesn't care about you. Like whatever music is the thing that we sense it to be, that is so special and there with us. It's not like a loving partner. It's a selfish, it's like something that doesn't have your best needs in mind. And actually like the goal is to serve the music. It's like not to go in and get your piece out. And like I think expecting the music to like have the capacity to care for us is actually just so I mean, to Jerry at least, it's just really dangerous because it won't. And like sometimes it does, there's no doubt. And like sometimes you'll go and experience music, especially when it's with the performance stuff, and it feels very rewarding. And then it feels like the way to be in that rewarding cycle is to be connected to that performance thing, and it's just a placebo or whatever. Like that space is fucked. That space is totally not a safe situation for your psyche, like especially if you don't learn how to come to terms with the fact that it's like not really an everyday thing to have like everybody's attention focused on you. I'm not, I don't even want to say good or bad, but it is certainly like, you know, like the quality of attention is like uh just like one of the most important qualities in the contemporary world. And like people make millions of dollars over like what you're looking at on the computer screen, right? And like how long you have that picture up. They like calculate the number of minutes and then money goes this way and that way. Because like what the whole internet social media complex is doing is it's actually just trying to figure out how your attention works and then hold your attention. um and it's just like kind of interesting like how much all of these pieces are kind of uh like pulling our attention quality like into like it's so important what you focus your attention on, I guess is what I'm kind of trying to say. And
I
like
think maybe, I
Mhm.
think maybe like um, what you're getting at, and correct me if I'm wrong, like just having the right intention or like why you're performing, so that these things that are so like, that are such variables that, you know, it could be good, it could be bad, you could have another opportunity, you could not, whatever. It's like, if you have the right intention for performance, for your performance, then it doesn't shake you.
Yeah,
Is
and
that
actually no,
part of
just
what is that
and I
part
also
of
kind
what you're saying?
sorry, I just my brain got fried for a sec there. I was just thinking though,
Okay.
like, about like attention actually. Like when you stand on stage and you're performing and people are looking at you, there is attention directed at you, right?
Mhm.
Like everybody's focusing their focused energy on you. And one of the things that they realized about the internet and all of this shit is like your focused energy is actually the source of and resource, whatever. I don't know how to put the value, right? And like I don't think we have a very good like physiological metaphysical sense of what this is. But like if you sit in a place and everybody looks directly at you, something physiologically metaphysically is happening there. And I'm gonna posit, I don't know if this is true. I'm everybody here performs, so I'm super curious. Like I think the more people that are looking at you at one point in time, just the more energy of all of that attention gets focused onto this one point. And that is not intangible. Like you feel that point.
Feeling, especially because of what we're doing. We're like, we're stirring up emotion in these people, right? So it's like their energy is heightened, and then it's being sent in our direction. We can feel it for sure, like 1,000%. I don't know if there's a way to like quantify that or really prove it, but I feel it. And that creates nerves. Like really the nerves can sometimes feel like energy wiggling in your body. Sometimes that's what it is. Like, I like that. I like what you said. And I feel like that's a lot of the fear comes from that. And we like term it as fear, but sometimes it can really just be like that energy that we're receiving, the energy, and it's like in our belly, in our body. Like it's, you know, I definitely,
It's,
that's what it is.
it's totally scary too, because that kind of attention is not in regular life that much, you know? And there's like a lot of ways that we avoid that kind of attention, like what y'all are talking about with social media, like it's a buffer, like on the bus or like at school or whatever. And yeah, it is really like I remember certain points where it's just like it feels like your heart is beating so fast just because there's so much of this like unfamiliar energy. And that's kind of like where anxiety for playing shows again comes from for me, because it's just like I haven't played a show in like 2 years, more than 2 years. So yeah, I'm really afraid of what that kind of stuff can do, because it's also like I'm sure like a lot of people just like during the pandemic just like sort of like falling more into yourself or something instead of something external. So receiving so much external energy in a performance atmosphere, it seems really scary to me right now. Yeah.
Yeah, this is really hitting something for me because it's true. It's true. Another thing that just ties into this, I had shared with Nick last night, was like the fact that everything's filmed, like the fact that as soon as anything happens, everyone wants to like snap what you're doing. And it's like terrifying. Like this, the way we are now, it's like we just want to record everything and share everything. And it's like a little 20-second snippet of something that was like an hour long, and it's not going to depict what it really was. And then like these things, it's like it's not just eyes, it's like everyone has these eyes and they have like these eyes. So it's like double the, and then it's like from every one person, how many hundreds, how many thousands? It's like, whew, it's a lot more than it ever was. So yeah. Does anyone else have any more like fears that are coming up?
I don't know, like for me, like, yeah, so much of what folks have said resonates for me. And then I also have this fear of like having not performed in 2 years, and then performance being this thing that I loved so much. Like I loved like bouncing off of what people were doing in an audience and feeling their energies and sending them things back. And I just loved it so much. And then not doing it for 2 years and like knowing I'm a different person and knowing I'm in a different place now, it's kind of like it's like it's just like intimidating in another way.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Just
And I also feel like,
remembering-
oh, sorry, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, just remembering how much I loved it and then how I haven't done it.
I feel like a nice thing when you're performing a lot is that you kind of like grow with your performing, or like the performance can reflect yourself as you're changing. But in this situation that a lot of us are in, where like the performance aspect is gone while we're going through like maybe the most intense period of like
Mhm.
our lives in a social sense, like, or a societal sense, like it's really jarring to think about sharing that in a way, you know? Yeah.
It's like we're new people. It's
Mhm.
like it's really, really scary for me. Wow. So true.
Yeah, and I think like honestly, like how a lot of us had to go at this whole thing before is they're just like you really get thrown into something without a lot of context or understanding about what's going on. And like honestly, like I don't see a lot of people talking about the stage. Like, why do we use it? Where does it come from? What's the deal actually?
Mhm.
Like if it's just music that we're working with, why do we present it like this? Like, do we necessarily have to? Just like literally physiological questions about doing music, and like asking questions about why things would become habitual. Like why? Like why wouldn't we do music where like everybody just sits on a chair in a different room, and then I don't know, like what the fuck? Like there's literally like bands. Like what the fuck? It actually doesn't, it's so boring in the history of all music and like creativity of people just working with sounds. It's like the most calcified, rarefied, ridiculous, inhuman thing to ever happen in the history of music is what's going on right now. There's no question about it. There's no question about it. It's it's like the most unmusical, like premeditated shit that you've ever seen. And it's happening like across every facet of life. And it's so boring and everybody knows it, you know? And it's just like amazing. 'Cause, again, to me, because like the shit about the stage, also why I love going to see shows, is seeing people who can cook something up really good on one side of the computer and then put it on a stage and have it absolutely devoured by the audience's expectations of how that shit is supposed to play out in the club, on the stage, or whatever that situation is. Because also I think like something that a lot of people are afraid of when it comes to performance that's like hard to voice is just the fact that like your practice room shit and then the concert itself are happening on two completely different playing fields, and you can't prepare for that. You can't prepare for, like, there's certain ways in which you can prepare for what the real life thing will be like, and there's just certain ways in which you can't. There's certain ways in which you can know like how the music will be in the space, the music that you're working on, and there's certain ways in which you can't.
Mhm.
And then so and kind of like I feel like a lot of what we're like looking at like kind of thinking about these like scary aspects about is because like something is really like holding us back. And like I don't think it's like too often that we're like very explicit about like like delineating the fears, delineating these kinds of obstacles, even though they're just like in any other type of work, if you had obstacles that were like so apparent, there would have to be some kind of plan, or else those obstacles would be the end of the thing. So yeah, I mean that's just kind of something I'm thinking about, like while we're like collecting this list, because this is actually a really cool list, and I'm also still curious if people are willing to share some more of these fears, because it's like a interesting history of what's going on when we're doing this.
I have a big one that like I was just thinking about, and it was something that I was actually talking to Kel about last night, and sort of made me realize this about myself, is that like there's like, for me, there's a fear of kind of like what you were saying, Kristen, of like the filming and like so many eyes on you. Like it's sort of exponential of what it was even when I first started playing shows and stuff. But like the idea of being like defined by what I did on the stage that day, and like everything, it's not like a holistic view of me as a person or even me as an artist. It's like being judged, but in such a like specific way, and like really always obsessing and being afraid of like doing the wrong thing on stage or showing the wrong music or like something like that, you know, like a fear of not putting my best self forward, or like a fear of like what I'm doing right now not being my like magnum opus masterpiece, even though that's like not a realistic expectation of like anything that I do, you know.
That's always my fear about sharing recordings. Cause like for
Yeah.
me, it was like I could perform and do like whatever, and it just like felt
Mhm.
really good for me. And then, but then I'm really bad at sharing recordings, because like that feels like what you just described to me. It's
Mm.
like it feels like a recording feels like this. I don't know.
It's
Mhm.
like a tiny
Yeah.
snippet. It's like one sentence of a whole story, and you know that it's not really a depiction of you, but it's like if we don't share, then there's this fear of like, okay, if I don't share, am I going to still continue to get these opportunities? Because like probably not.
Mm.
So it's like it's, and then it's like you're leaving, because social media, it's like, I guess it's like promotion if someone shares your stuff. So it's like you're leaving it up to someone random to decide like what is shared of you to like however many. It's terrifying to me. Like that's a big fear for me. I don't like it. It's happened so many times where I go and I see all these shared videos of me and I'm kind of like, ugh, I just wouldn't have shared that. Or I just like, it's just not the best part. That wasn't even the best part. I think it's just like, I don't like it.
Yeah.
I
I
just
actually
not-
felt bad one time. I shared a video of something that a friend of mine did, and they like they were doing their like reposting of all their like Instagram stories of their performance. And then they shared the one that I posted and was like, oh, I feel so like embarrassed by this moment or something, you know? And I was like, oh shit, that's so real. I'm so sorry, you know?
yeah.
It's hard to have that stuff captured for sure. And then I have to see it.
Mhm. It's just the world we're in. People can't not capture everything, and I
But
don't
it's
know.
just like so amazing, like to really sit back and watch all the cell phones come up and
Mhm.
and you get like all that like you know like multitudinal shots of all of this like one happening. And the most amazing shit about those videos is, if you're gonna be for real about it, they don't get watched even once. You know what I mean? Like nobody's taking that video on their cell phone, that ass video at a concert that sounds like and watching it again. I don't believe it.
Right.
No,
It's more about like, look at where I was last night.
If it was, yeah, I mean, like if it gets watched again, it's like what, like once or twice, and then just archived. And actually, what it is too is it's people bootlegging everyone else's shit, like gangster style, like actually going up to all these artists, being like, "Yo, like I know that your thing is your thing, but now it's fucking mine because I said so. And honestly, I'm gonna give myself the credit to record your music with my shitty fucking cell phone. And then I'm gonna keep it, and I'm not gonna buy your music. I'm gonna buy a Spotify account.
Remember like a period of time where there was like tried to be control over that, like no cell phone videos or photos?
I'm doing it from now on at all the rest of my stuff. Because the last concert I did, I was like, turn off, like, no cell phone. Turn off your cell phones. Like, because I relate so much with the thing about the recording, and it's not like, I just don't think this conversation is happening enough, and it needs to more. Fuck sound recordings. Fuck it. It's not that cool. Like, if what happened because we got inundated with sound recordings is that nobody can like activate instruments in just a thoroughly exciting way, that's like disconnecting us from millions of years of our ancestry. There's no need. Like, absolutely every person is anointed with their own family's entire musical history, of which is deep. It doesn't matter where your family comes from. Like, absolutely does not. You have so much DNA relational music. And like, it's not to say that it's not cool to make music in a way that's with recordings or digital or electric or any of this stuff, but just to notice in this noticing practice, like, because what would have happened before there were recordings if there was a song? Like, either you would have to learn the song or you would have to hear the song played. So the impetus to actually know these songs and keep activating them through knowing them, where they're actually recorded, is on like the, what's the word for it? They have this word for it, like the collective consciousness. That's why learning things is actually so important. Like, everybody shares a piece of tape, and like, it's easier than having to go and buy and sell like literally pieces of plastic. Like, and it's the only way to make sense of how America and music could have happened the way it did, because you have like more concert pianists in America in a 15-year span than you have in Europe in 400 years. And there are all these melanated people playing the blues and stride and all this stuff. It just never happened in the world where that percentage of the population had that level of literacy with the piano. And it's like, again, all we're talking about too with this music stuff, performance stuff, is like, the more that I'm starting to realize is actually like about literacy. And because like I think so much of what we're bringing up, it's cool to have a group talking about performance in this way where everybody's experienced performance. Like, before you do it, you don't know that you're going to lose an entire day before your show, right? Like, and those are the kinds of things that you can only really get from experiencing the kinds of things that we've experienced. Like, even the fact that I'm able to talk about that feeling of like the point of energy that comes from everybody perceiving you from off of the stage onto the stage, like, if you've never experienced it, it's just a collection of words. Like, I don't know what that would mean to anybody. And so it's a really cool practice that you just like take a measurement, you know? Each of us has like our own completely unique experience from stepping on the stage. And every person, it's just like a measurement of the reality of where it's at when you're doing it, in a way. And I think that's also why we all naturally can be so good at performance. Even when it's terrifying, you know, I think of that song Stage Fright, like, where you just like, you know, you're like afraid to go and play that song. And then when you get to the end, you want to start all over again. Like, that like it's a terrifying thing, the stage. Like all of these things that we're bringing up too are like very legitimately extremely scary things. Like it's not just like talking about something that's kind of scary. Like the kind of fear that can be engendered in someone when you step up in front of the stage in front of people is like very serious fear. And unlike the other serious fears where you could die, like, oh, because this is the other thing Chris and I were talking about this whole thing is like just asking yourself the question connected to those fears and performance as well, even explicitly, what is the worst thing that could happen?
So that's kind of like a little bit of a tip, I guess. It's something that I've done that's helped, like just imagining the worst thing. Like, what's the worst possible thing that could happen? And then kind of coming to terms with it. That can help a little bit. That can help a little bit. It's helped me a bit. Sometimes it's really not that bad. Like, when you think about it, it's like, oh, okay, I could do that.
Like, does anybody want to honestly, because Kirsten and I did this when we were talking on the phone the other day, and I thought it was kind of a funny, yeah, it was like you're doing a concert and you just have to say out loud literally what the worst thing that could ever happen could be.
Like, how hypothetical are we talking here? Like,
Go, it's your game.
like
Yeah.
a nuke hits the venue. Like,
Yeah, but is that
millions
even
dead.
that big a deal? Like a new kid's the venue, you're gone.
I mean, you're vaporized.
You're vaporized.
It's not so
Yeah,
bad
but
for you
there-
anymore.
For
Yeah.
anyone there at the venue,
You're over.
you're over.
I think in terms of like embarrassment or like whatever you're afraid of, right? Like if you're afraid of not remembering things, so like what's the worst associated with that?
Right.
But I think general is fine too, because like if your worst case scenario fear honestly is that a nuke hits the building or like a bomb hits the building or some shit like that, then you can even still sit with that fear and be like, if that's what happens, then I'll be dead and everyone else will be dead and fuck the performance anyway.
Yeah.
Like there is nothing that you can't. And if
Kinda
I can do that
works.
with the nuke, then we can probably do that with some of the other worst case scenarios.
Yeah. Like a power outage or something. Show can't go on.
That's also like something that's like outside of your control though. I feel like something that could be like the worst thing that could happen is like you like lose your voice on stage or something.
That's the
Or
big
like
thing.
the actual thing that actually happened to me one time is on, I don't know, have y'all ever done like radio stuff like on college radio or whatever? Okay. So it's like the worst place ever to play because it's just like a carpeted like room with like two people looking at you.
Always at 7:30 a.m. It's like,
Yeah, at like some stupid time of the day. But so we were playing and like the keyboard singer person was playing, and then I came in and I realized that the keyboard was like playing everything just randomly, started playing things like a half step up. So in my, like, we were on the radio, live on the radio, and I was like, oh my God, I have to like transpose everything on the fly, like right now. And it was fine. It was just like, the first note was so funny and so bad. Like, we all started laughing, but then we just started playing it in the right key and it was okay. You know, and that's like one of the worst things that I could imagine happening within like the realm of like not dying, you know?
Yeah, I think like I'm like, yeah, it has to be for me something that it's like, oh, I'm supposed to have control over this. So like I'm supposed to, and like that would be the scariest thing is like that I just don't do the thing that I'm supposed to do, or like that I want to do, that I care about doing, and that I just don't do it for some reason. I don't know. I'm thinking about like we were watching like the like worst of ever like American Idol last night.
Those are
And, like,
hilarious.
there's one with this woman and she walks in the room and she's just got so much confidence and she's just like, I'm so clever, like I'm so amazing, like I am the next American Idol, like everybody like wants to see what I got to show the world. And she comes out and she's wearing this cowboy hat, and then she stands in front of the judges. She's like, I don't need this anymore. And then she starts to sing, and her singing is just, it's just not very good. And the judges are like, hey, you're just not very good. And then she's like, I know I'm not very good. I'm not a singer. And they're like, why are you here? It's a singing competition. And then she's just like, because I want to be the first American Idol that doesn't sing. And like, this is my, and it's like, I don't know, maybe my worst fear is like that I just like somehow turn into this person that is like, I'm here to perform, but I'm not a performer. I'm not going to perform. And then I just like have a weird cowboy hat all of a sudden. Maybe that's
possible scenario.
that's what
Like-
I'm afraid of.
Like extreme hubris kind of thing. Is that what you're saying? You're like worried about becoming like the embodiment of hubris.
That is such a, honest to God, though, all jokes aside, that is such a legitimate basic fear of the
Yeah.
It's just like being out of tune, and it's like
Mm.
for me when I've
Only ever done anything out of tune.
yeah, but like if it's supposed to be in tune, or like I don't know, and then you
No,
just
no,
play the wrong note, and then like when I've gotten up on stage, I've only performed like a couple times, but like it's such a like physiological reaction to stress where I'm like shaking, and it like makes me play weirdly. Like if I'm playing the saxophone, I'm like squealing and stuff, which can sound cool, but then like being this, say I had like a little solo or something, and it was like, you know, I'm squealing because I'm so nervous, like that is the worst case scenario for me. But like why is that such a big deal? It's just like embarrassing.
Oh, it feels so bad, man. Like, dude, when was the okay, so weird. I don't mean to put you on the spot in any way, but like, so when was the first show that you did?
I played at the Seahorse, like I don't know, maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago. There was like 150 people there.
What was it like when you like just like walking on stage for the first time with everybody there?
I was like so awkward and weird. Like I feel like I was only looking at like, one of my best friends like right in front of me, and then everyone else was like blacked out. Like I couldn't see anything else, so I was just kind of focusing on the people that I was playing with, and like my one friend that I was like trying to be silly like right in front of me. But I had a blast, but I was like shaking the whole time. I'd never like performed before.
Yeah, and like, do you remember how it felt?
After, yeah, I remember just being really silly, and like I felt relieved. But when I don't know, when I was playing and it sounded good, I feel like I was just happy, but also scared. Like it was a really intense feeling.
Yeah, it's sorry. I know. I don't mean to ask like such ridiculous questions. It's just like fuck. The saxophone is crazy because like it's about the breath. Like it's literally it's not an instrument for performance. It's a tool that was created bajillion years ago for people to work with their own breath. Period. Like instruments in general, clarinets, the reeds, the violins, all this shit is about sitting alone and being at peace with balance, being able to hear the fucking sonorous balance, the voice, all of these things are like these meditation practices in time, right? Like ancient, mystical, these basic things. And then you take, and honestly, I feel like Jerry helped me out with understanding this in such a huge way. Like, and then you take that thing that is just allowing you to be in touch with your own breath, to be like, hey, where's my breath at today? Hey, like I'm checking in with you, breath. Where are you at, breath? And then you're like, hey, breath, just checking in with you today. How are you doing? I know I'm on stage. Breath's like, and you're like, I guess I'm supposed to do my thing now.
Meditating.
Mm.
And like it can only be a reflection of what's going on. It can only do that. Like the saxophone's not, it can't sort out your shit for you. And then you try to, and like the squealing shit, honestly, dude, I still get shit like that happening to me all the time playing concerts with the tenor sax. I'll be like playing and I'll be like, yeah. I'll be like, I don't know, man. Because it's like something on the inside of you somewhere
Yeah,
is not relaxed.
exactly.
And it's like any of that. I'm not a singer, so I can't be for sure, but I'm sure this is the same way. Like you carry that tension inside these like soft parts of your muscle that have to be soft to reverberate. And then you put that tension in there, and then it doesn't allow that thing to vibrate, and the whole thing one of those harmonics has to break and crack
Yeah.
to keep the energy working. Like it's just
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. And I feel like with all these fears, I don't think they can be really like completely alleviated, but there are things we can do to help, like there's things we can do to help that may seem unrelated, but one thing for me, there's several things that I've done that I do when I have a performance to avoid that lack of relaxation, especially in terms of what I eat, like dairy, that'll cause you to phlegm. So it's like when you get that nervous, shaky, and then the phlegm on top of that doesn't help. Or like I get really anxious when I'm looking for parking. So I'll make sure someone drives me, right? Or I always write a script for my performance. Like that's one thing I wanted to share. It's like I write a complete script, like the songs that I'm singing, what's the story I'm telling overall from start to finish? Like what's the story? There's a story in all of our art, even if it's visual, there's a story. So like, what's the story? What am I telling? I'll literally decide exactly what I want to say about each song. There's some songs I don't say anything about. I'll decide when will I introduce myself? How will I introduce myself? I'll practice it. I'll know exactly what I'm going to say. And then I'm able to, like when I do get that fear, it's not compounded with all that other shit, right? Because I know exactly what's happening, what's going on. I even realized it's terrifying to me to speak, right? To like, I could get up and just wail, but to actually just stand there and talk, it's really scary to me. So I was like, I'm just not going to. I'm just going to get on stage and I'm going to sing. And then afterwards, we'll just have music playing. And then I'll talk to introduce myself over the music so it feels more songy. And that worked, right? Like things like that to kind of trick your brain into feeling like you're doing something you're more comfortable with. You know what I mean? Like even Nick, you were saying that you can talk all day, but then with singing, you get those nerves. So like instead of thinking of it as singing, think of it as telling them a story. Like you're saying something to them melodically, but just it's like a mind game. You need to think of it as like, well, I'm just talking to them with the melody. That's it. And sometimes your mind, because it's just the brain. That's all it is.
Mhm.
Yeah, the script thing has helped me so much. Like, and then not feeling like I have to talk, or not feeling like I have to acknowledge the audience. I'll do it when I'm ready, because they're here to see me.
Mm.
Right. So like something, I was in this Cuban exchange program, and I forget his surname, but his name is Augusto. I don't know his surname, but I feel like people may know who he is, but he's Cuban. And we did like a few workshops on performance. And one of the things that stood out to me is he said, do not acknowledge the audience until you are ready to assert a certain level of power. Because it'll help you to feel more comfortable as well. So when you walk onto the stage, doing little things, there's always something to do, like whatever, setting up or whatever. Don't acknowledge them until you are ready. And when you're ready, they will be ready, right? Because another fear of mine would be like that they won't pay attention, that they won't like, people chit chat and whatever. So like another thing is using silence as a way to like not being uncomfortable with silence and using it as a way to like take a moment to chill. Usually people will come and they'll listen and then you begin again. Like don't be afraid of that silence. If you stumble over your words, or if you're like, you forget something, it's okay to just chill. Usually the audience will chill as well, because there's nothing worse. Well, I mean, there's worse things, but like being an audience member and seeing people on stage uncomfortable is like the worst.
Yeah.
Also, there are ways, like body language wise, to look more comfortable than you are. You know, being okay with silence gives that impression that you are comfortable. If you just breathe, you're comfortable. Everyone's like, oh, they're cool. Like they're okay with themselves, you know? Silence is like the magic key that I've used to just like reset myself in those times where I'm like I can't, you know, where my vocal cords are like ice, just chill. Yeah.
Yeah, and when
Yeah.
we were like back doing some of these exercises, there was this, we would just get somebody to sit on a chair on the middle of the stage, and you don't tell the audience what's going to happen. It's really interesting how long a person can sit in a chair and you can keep the audience's attention with nothing else. Because actually what you can forget while you're on stage is that you're actually mounting expectation while all of those moments pass, and that's like to your benefit. And like it's just kind of interesting that we like the panic reflex would be to like fill the space and do something, but every one of these things that is like antithetical to the panic reflex is something that will generate calm in your audience, because they're panicked, you're panicked, the whole thing is that like situation. And if there can be like a sense of control, then there can be so much of a sense of focus, right? Because I think like also one of the big ideas that we kind of wanted to talk about, connecting all of this stuff together, this like attention and focus and the practice and the fears, is like this kind of thing that comes back to like one of the most basic parts of kind of like what we're talking about, we keep coming back to talk about in this Wholesound thing, which is like, why are you doing it? It's like, and it can kind of seem like a really vague, open-ended, like this really weird question. And I think it feels that way as long as we feel like we have to answer that question to somebody else, perhaps. But like, I just like touching base sort of semi-regularly with the idea, with like this thing of like, why am I making music? Like, why am I doing a performance of music? It's just, it's like, and it seems like such a bizarre thing to do, to make those questions explicit for ourselves. But I just don't think we do it explicitly enough. And it's, I don't know if it's necessarily that easy an answer for anyone.
I don't think it is, but do we all want to maybe think about it?
Does anyone have an easy answer?
Thinking about it for a bit. I don't have an easy answer. But I thought it might be nice if we all took a moment to just think and then maybe share if we're comfortable.
The question is being, why do we perform or why do we play music?
I would say like sort of either or. Maybe
Why do
like
we
a little
perform
bit,
it?
yeah, maybe like a little bit of the question is like why, because I guess kind of what we're talking about is like the fear of performance. And I guess like to me, like before we can even come up with techniques to deal with whatever the fears are, we like have one super special weapon in the battle against our fears, and it's our intention. And like that's like gonna be the thing that actually lets us do the impossible when it comes to all of these like impossibly ridiculously weird problems about performance or whatever the fuck it may be. Like I don't know how to find my audience, I don't know how to sell my track, I don't know how to whatever, like I those are all my, you know.
But then, yeah, if it's like we know why we're doing it, we have that motivating force that can kind of overcome the fears.
Do we maybe want to even take like a 5-minute break and think about that? Because I have to pee.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind that. We could take a minute.
Yeah, so let's take a like a quick 5-minute, maybe 7 minutes. We'll come back at 20.
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
And then go from there. But I guess like the bigger question being like just to ask that question, like what is the why? What does the why look like? And like we don't even need explicit specific answers, just like kind of trying to draw a big circle around what the why looks like what the intention of thing looks like, so that we can kind of go from there.
Mhm. Okay.
Yeah, like what did anybody think about that question about like the why, like of why
The why of why?
why
Why do we perform music?
I actually remembered this funny story, or well, yeah, it's a funny story that my friend told me about how like he was getting prepared for, he was doing like I don't know if he's still in it, but he was doing like composition school at Concordia, like music school. But he had to do some performance stuff and he was like feeling a bit shy about it. And he was like getting ready to do it and ran into one of his professors. And his professor was like, oh, like what's going on? You get ready for your thing. And he's like, yeah. And he's like a pretty, I don't know if you guys know Michael Halls, but he's like a pretty like shy guy. And the professor was just like, he's this like old German piano player who's like amazing at piano. And he was just like, just show them that you love music.
Mm.
And that like inspired him for his performance. And now I like, whenever I think about like, if I'm feeling bad about performance, it's like kind of like a nice thing to think about. Like, I just need to show people that I love music, and that's like a good thing to share. But then I also thought about like ego and like competition aspects, which is like unfortunately kind of a part of the equation sometimes when I think about reasons to want to show, you know, my music and stuff. Yeah.
why unfortunate?
Yeah, I was gonna ask the same thing because like the truth is fine.
Yeah, no, I know. It's just like I wish that it wasn't,
Right.
but
But I guess like I'm wondering like why wish that part away?
I don't know. It feels like petty to think about it that way in those terms, but maybe it's not. Like, do y'all like share that feeling sometimes, or feel like
Yeah.
it's fine?
Yeah, I think like I have a deep reason and then I have the fact that I like the sound of my own voice. Really, like I do.
Right. Yeah.
Like to hear it amplified, and I feel like I sound good. I like really I like to hear it. I think that's fine. But if you just like said that to anyone, they'd be like, damn, okay. But like, no, it's okay. So like if I didn't like my voice, why would I put a microphone in front of it? Right. But then like my deeper reason would be like, I find it really rewarding to encompass a feeling into a story, like to magnify a tiny feeling or experience and then be able to tell a story, and then it's rewarding to me when someone's like, oh, you helped me because I wasn't able to move that emotion. I didn't really know I felt that, but you told a story about this tiny feeling, and that to me feels really good. Yeah.
Yeah, and also too, like this activity, I think, is like one of these things that's so personal, honestly, that like really trying to answer it for yourself without any judgment. Because honest God, if the answer could just be something as simple as I like the sound of my own voice, like that, it's so liberating. It's just so liberating. And honestly, like if the answer can be to you something as simple as like, I just want to be better than Bob. I want to be better than this person I fucking hate, actually. And I'm only playing music to show up this person because fuck them. Like, it's not necessarily going to be maybe but again, like no judgment. Like, why today? Why go and do it? Like, what is driving the and also the reason too that I was bringing that thing up about the competition thing is like uh if you look into the history of the music, you'll find that that's like a fundamental part of also like of all of the rigorous disciplined sort of pursuits, like, and the competition, like even like sports, and the competition isn't like actually a confrontation, but just because Jerry would always say to us too that the actual goal of music and of this work is to elevate the consciousness, period. Like literally to elevate the level of consciousness, to like elevate where people are just seeing what the fuck is going on around them. And yeah, I just think that we know that that's part of like part of what's going on, I guess.
Yeah.
You mean like part of elevating the consciousness is being like trying to push it, and that's kind of where the competition comes from?
Yeah, truly. I mean, and again,
Like go further than the other people or something.
yeah, and if you were to read like Miles or any of those books about the history of how the music turned out, it was through like so much competition, actually, right? And like and doing something that nobody else could do, as a reflection of actually just how robust the practice was. And again too, like if you were to look at the history of just the piano, for example, which in North America, which like lays out the history of the harmonic concept and all of it, it came from this thing called cutting contests, which were people competing against each other explicitly in a musical setting. So like those aspects are truly, you know, like the music will reflect back to us this level of sanity about these things that we feel so judgmental about, you know, like, and it's wicked to actually like bring questions like this to Little Richard. Be like, Little Richard, what do you think about like the like how the ego aspect, like, and the competition aspect and like pretending you're better than everybody else works? Like, you have any advice for me, Little Richard? And there's like hours and hours and hours of footage of Little Richard talking about it, and then he tells you everything you need to know with the like disco ball suit. He's playing piano with that Woodstock thing. He only plays one song.
I have a couple answers to my why.
Yeah.
I think it's like, yeah, for me, I like I don't know, I've like needed just like spaces, yeah, just for like creative expression and for play, like whether that's like I'm writing or I'm just like making things and I'm doing it by myself, or if I'm like, yeah, doing something with friends collaboratively, or if I'm performing or something, I've just like needed those spaces. Um, and yeah, and then I've also always like uh like needed to be like a person that also like supports others to just have those spaces. And so I think it's like for me it's about like, yeah, knowing the spaces that I need to just express whatever it is I need to express that time, and then um yeah, just uh being present with others and their stuff. So it's about like connection and community too.
Mhm.
That's the why.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's awesome, honestly. Like, or does anybody else want to share any of their whys too?
Mine are pretty similar to Hannah's. Um, it's like how I relate to people, just through writing songs about my experience and then singing them to crowds, and then occasionally someone comes up afterward and is like, that one really spoke to me, or like that one resonated with me because I have similar experiences. um, Performing feels good for me, like after the anxiety onset, after the 24-hour anxiety trip, it's like 5 seconds on stage and then I feel like a completely different person.
Yeah,
I feel like an adrenaline level comes through. Sorry, Hannah?
the like feeling and then like knowing that it's being felt thing.
Yeah, yeah. You can tell when an exchange of energy is happening, and you can tell when people aren't attentive, and you can tell when people are really connecting to it. And it's like that's what I seek, I think. And like I don't know when I discovered that feeling, but I also feel like that is my purpose on earth, to be frank. I mean, I feel like it's the only thing I'm really good at. So I'm like, might as well go with it, and keep trying it until I can't anymore.
Yeah, I had something like that in mine as well, where it's like, well, first is like that feeling of like feeling seen or whatever.
Mm.
I think that's kind of like what I was getting from what you were saying. That's something that I wrote down. But then also like just thinking about how also the pandemic plays into this, just like how thinking about how fucked up it is when it's not there, and how like important it is just for my like brain to be normal, to be like playing music or like playing music with other people, sharing in that like collective consciousness that is music. Like it's like the only thing that I'm good at, because it's like the thing that's like so important to me, and like how I express myself and express love and stuff like that. Like, yeah, just not having it would be so fucked. So it's like part of the why is because it's like the only thing that feels fulfilling or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel that. I think like I used to feel like it was the only thing I was good at. But then once I really thought about like my true reason I'm doing it, like I started to see other ways I could fulfill that desire. Like the feeling similar to Jeremy's, like the feeling of like I told this story about my own life and someone else benefited from it and they're able to like understand themselves better. There's so many other like professions that offer that, or like ways to get that same result, because I think that's what you're talking about, Jeremy, like feeling like that's your purpose. I also do.
Mhm.
So it's like when the pandemic hit, I did a lot of uh, soul searching in terms of that. Like, okay, so if I can't get on stage and do this, like, how do I fulfill that like, what am I getting from the stage? And then how do I get it in other ways, right? So then
Mhm.
I started to pick up more with my tarot and astrology, because I was like, oh, so I can give people the same thing. Like I can still give them that feeling of like, whoa, I understand myself, right? And it's been fulfilling. So I don't know if that could help, because the two of you said that you feel like it's the only thing you're good at, but I'm just saying it's probably not.
I'll specify. I think I said it's the only thing I'm really good at.
Okay.
But, like self-doubt plagues me, but I think I can be sure in saying that it's the thing that like sets me apart, or like I feel it feels like a natural talent
Yes.
that I've fostered. Not to say I can't throw up a sheet of drywall or something, but it's like it's the one that makes me feel most like human and purposeful, you know? Yeah.
I
But
get that.
But
Yeah.
I see what you mean, for
Yeah,
sure.
and that's not to say like you have to do something else, but it was like for me, that's what helped me, because I felt like I couldn't do the only thing I thought that I was, again, like really good at.
Mm.
Because yeah, like, I can do other things, but it's like the only thing that I felt fulfilled me, like singing and performing and stuff. And then I was like, no, I need to narrow down why I'm fulfilled by that thing, and then maybe there's other things that can give me some more, you know.
Yo, that's so like important, because like it's like music definitely is like special and like uniquely amazing for sure. But like the thing that satisfies me about music, it's not music itself, it's things that happen within music. So the things that happen within music can happen in other stuff. Like I'm a songwriter for like mostly, I guess, kind of. But so like I've been writing more separate from like a music context in the past like few months. And that's been like feeling really good as like another way to satisfy like something like what music does for me. But I think you're right, is that it's important to think about how like there are other things that are happening that could make me happy. Yeah, because it's I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket, because then if I fail, then it's like pretty bad news.
But also it's like not even so much like if you fail, that's kind of like a little bit negative to me.
No, sorry, I didn't really mean it like that.
No, not that you can't be, but not like, not negative, because negativity is fine. But I mean, like, not to think, I need to think of other things in case I fail, but just like
Right.
other things to just, to kind of color your world, you know, like to say, well, hey, I can do this thing, I can do that thing. And like, I had a thought and it slipped me, but if it comes back, I'll just cut in and say it.
Mhm. Yeah, this is also super interesting. Like I feel like it like kind of it's just like like the answers are almost like working out in a similar, like how I kind of thought they would. I just want to like, does anybody else want to? Oh yeah, Kirsten, go ahead.
Yeah, I was saying it can kind of tie back into that fear, right? The fear of things not continuing, or the fear of cancellation, or the fear of whatever. It's like, if you know that there are other ways to fulfill whatever it is you're getting from it, then like that fear kind of alleviates it. I found that with me, I was kind of like, it made it easier to even choose opportunities, because I would see one and I'm like, I don't really want that one. And I just take it, because I don't feel the need to do something that I might be uncomfortable with at that thing, right? So yeah, that was my thought, that it feels like it's kind of circling back in my mind to that. Sorry, Nick.
No, badass. Yeah, Bri, do you want to go for your why? You don't have, no pressure, literally no pressure.
Oh yeah, I can go. I guess it's pretty simple. It's just like I just thought about live music in general and the feeling that I get even being in the audience of like it's just like the best feeling when everyone will like collectively react to music in like an emotional way. Like maybe there's like a moment where everyone starts like hooping and hollering, you know, like where they just like love the way something sounds. And then, yeah, my favorite way to play music is with other people in that kind of interaction. So to perform and be part of that I don't know, just to have that like collective reaction with everyone is, I guess, why I do it when it feels really good.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's so badass. Like, and it's just kind of amazing to me to think about asking this question of like why, because then if we like took our group as just like this little example, we would find like if we distilled what we were talking about, that the why is fulfillment.
Mhm.
That this is a fulfillment practice. Like straight the fuck up. Fulfillment, connect, and like being connecting with other people on the deepest fucking why ass level. Like it's so cool. Like, why do you eat food? Like, you know, like for fulfillment.
Fulfillment.
Yeah, like fulfillment, not
Fulfill
fulfillment.
me.
Like, but like, why do you know, like, why do you clean your bathroom or something? I don't know if I'm doing the best job with these new things I'm bringing up. Mostly what I'm trying to say is like, are all the other things the fucking life fulfillment thing? Like, this is crazy.
That's a really good question. That's a really good question. Like
Yeah, and
every
then, like, it's just like,
no, I was saying it's making me think. It's a good question. Yeah, continue. Sorry.
well, yeah, and just like in the sense that like, if we get to notice that about this one thing that we're doing together, we're like, oh yeah, that's my fulfillment thing. Like, oh yeah, that's the thing that I do because it's the only reason that I'm alive. So the next time, like, it's just like, honestly, hearing a group of musicians say it too, I'm like, oh yeah, you know that thing you offered me $100 for? That's my life fulfillment thing. Like, you know, there's no amount of money in the whole universe that will dictate whether I do or do not do this. So like, don't disrespect my life fulfillment thing. Fuck. Like, that's so that's so bullshit. Like, you know, like, and I just, because the whole reason I was even asking this question about why we, or like asking us all to think about the why, is it's really interesting to think about these fears, and then to know that what we're going to do is like apply practices to the fears so that we can have those practices when the fear comes up, right? But then like the deeper question to me is like knowing like what kind of like what practice do I want for these kinds of fears? Like what is the root of these kinds of fears, you know? And those are starting to ask these questions that start to become more and more abstract, more and more difficult to answer. And it seems like the question that would be also abstract is why, but it's actually not that abstract. It's like for everybody has to have a why. Because it's why you do, like you do actually do it. If you don't know the reason why, you just get up and do it, that's totally fine actually. But then like figuring out, searching for the reason why, and just knowing it for yourself gives you this crazy advantage on the practice, because you literally do know why. And then every time a problem comes up that needs to be solved with like, oh shit, like should I do this, should I take this opportunity or this one, should I like like, you know, like what should I be working on today in my practice, you know? Like and then being able to just be like, why the fuck am I doing this? Like I see a lot of people who practice every day that don't even know how to ask why on a short-term level or on progressively longer term levels, and not especially don't know how to ask the big why. And I think like maybe starting just in a peaceful way from a big why and trying to whittle down some whys, some really good why am I doing this? Because those things, they're just so helpful. And there is a good answer. Because especially too when the answer is like, yo, I love to bring people together. Well, then music is a cool thing to invest in because it brings a lot of people together compared to other things. Like, you know?
I like those thoughts.
That
So
was
how's
like the
every-
full form of that rant. I
Sorry?
don't think- That was like my whole rant.
Yeah. I was just gonna ask how everybody's feeling about like the things we discussed. Do you feel that you have takeaways you ponder on, or things that could support you in your journey going ahead, etc.?
I feel like when we were only talking about fears, like my anxiety was climbing the whole time. It was like, Jesus, I'm afraid of that too. Oh my God, that freaks me out too. And it was just like going up and up and up. But then once we started asking ourselves like why we do it, why we perform, or like, and even like some coping mechanisms on how to deal with the fear, then I started to level off. And it's like, oh yeah, I do it because I love it. Or like love is a response to fear that you can use to counteract the anxiety.
And fulfillment too. Like I even want to just go look up the etymology of it and think about it again. Like it's so interesting that we all like brought that up specifically. Like fulfillment as it's something different from love, even. Like I love to do this. Okay. Doing this brings me fulfillment. What the fuck? Like, and it's just like so interesting to think about the problems like how the question of fulfill like it's like almost like it's never occurred to me with such clarity until just now, but like bringing the question or like the answer of fulfillment to the questions that we've brought up, like it's actually a pretty good answer, surprisingly. Like this brings me even beyond, this makes me feel good, like, which is totally fine, which is totally works. Like this enriches my life. I know it's scary. I know it's hard. Like, is it worth prioritizing all of these uncomfortable, confusing things and like sitting with all of this discomfort for the sake of fulfillment? Question answered.
I guess that's the thing that happens like a lot of the time in life is like the competition between like fear and why, right? And like the fact that we're all like still like committed to music is just like whether we're aware of it or not. And it's so important to answer the question of why, but like knowing the reasons why, the why goes past the fear, you know, when the fears are so present in our mind, but sometimes the why isn't. It's like, I feel like it's an important practice, like beyond just thinking about performance, because it's such a big part of life is thinking about why you do things, even if you're afraid, you know?
Yeah, and even if it's just about having like a question that you can access, like, is this fulfilling?
Yeah.
And and then knowing too that if the answer is no for that moment, that's a really important answer. And like, especially even to know that at this moment that we're all like, yeah, I'm doing it because it's fulfilling. That's sick. And you know, like that will all change for all of us through all this. Like, and the question of why certainly isn't a question that you can ask right now and then be like satisfied that you have some answer to it. I don't think. I think maybe to the bigger why, like the bigger term why, we might be able to know. But they're like the big why is collected from all the small little whys. And it just does, it requires such an interesting kind of checking in. And if we're doing that checking in and then we can touch base with the times that it just is not feeling good, then we really do know that we can go like bloop and put that shit away. Because you don't have to do something that doesn't check those boxes, that doesn't feel good, that doesn't feel fulfilling, you just don't have to, you know? Because Kirsten, you and I were talking about this, because I really wanted Kirsten to give, I don't want to out you in this way, but I think this is legit. Like, I was like, Kirsten, I really want to give you to give like a talk on singing, like for people who are afraid of singing, like to like help somebody who want to sing, like how they're going to sing. And Kirsten's like, I don't think I can do that. Like, if you don't want to do it,
Yeah, I can.
I can't fucking help you.
If someone's too scared to sing, like, what the hell do you want me to do? Like, I don't know. I can teach you how to do it better, but what the fuck? There's no way. Like, there's no way. You just have to, the fear has to be less than your desire. Like, the desire to do it has to be stronger than the fear. And then you just will. And then you'll be like, okay, I need help to do this better. But like, you could never help somebody to like make noise with their mouth. Like, I just could never. It doesn't make sense. You just have to do it.
Yeah.
It's
Exposure
really
therapy.
scary, but it's like, it just is what it is. Like,
Mhm.
sorry, Jeremy?
I said exposure therapy. Like the more I did it, the easier it became, legitimately.
Yeah, you just have to do it, but you just wanted to,
Yeah.
really wanted to, and you're like, well, to me, same thing. Like, I grew up super shy. Like, I wouldn't talk, I wouldn't nothing. I was really, really quiet, really shy, and like, hopefully this airplane's not too loud. I don't know if you can all hear it. Just wait a second. You can't hear it?
No.
Okay, it's really loud to me. Anyway, it was like scarier to me not being a performer.
Mm.
Like, the idea of not doing it was so scary to me because it's just what I wanted to do. So like, yeah, I think it has to be like that, or you won't do it.
Mhm.
And that's a cool point to notice too, is that like if you're doing it, then the forces inside of you of desire have overcome the forces of fear. Even if you're experiencing the fear more than you're experiencing your connection to your desire, in the internal battle is over. Like, your desire won, you're doing it. And I think that like it's interesting too. I was just thinking in this, how we just did this whole talk, like how ready I think people are often to share their fears, and maybe like how much closer we are to knowing our fears than how much closer we are to knowing our desires and our whys. Maybe if not knowing, at least like articulating.
Yeah.
And I think that that might even just reflect the way in which we like do empower those fears. Maybe, and then like maybe like the whole kind of point of this whole thing is just thinking about like just knowing that those desires are there, that they're real, and that they're super important, and like bringing clarity to them can actually bring a lot of clarity to this whole thing, maybe.
Yeah, because the fears are like always present. We know what we're afraid of more so than like why we can overcome those fears to keep performing in the first place.
And if I could go to like a 2-hour talk where all the musicians had to honestly, like very honestly, expose their desire for doing it, I just think that that would be like one of the most illuminating possible spaces.
Make it happen.
But
Like,
yeah,
in a really way. Like, if everyone was super honest about it, it'd be really good.
and that would be like such a cool, it's interesting to think about, like that would be such a cool map to make and have. Like, these are lists of desires that artists have to keep going.
Oh, Nick, you didn't say your why. Did you
Yeah,
share
like,
yours?
oh wait, sorry, what'd you say?
I'm saying you didn't share yours, or I don't remember you sharing.
Oh yeah, I mean like,
Didn't you
for
say it was like to get girls? Didn't you say that when you first started? It was like you wanted to play sax to get girls. Is that what you told me? I feel like you said that to me.
doesn't sound possible. I can tell you for sure it didn't work out like that.
Yeah, but I remember you saying when you first started music, it was like, yeah, I'm gonna get all the chicks.
Yeah, I definitely think I felt like that in like high school the most, but then anytime that like that people were interested in me, I was terrified. Like I couldn't even. I was like,
Aw.
I mean, for me now though, the why is like just because I feel like Jerry really like pushed us on a lot of these, like that was like existential music class. And I mean, it kind of got to this point where we were like learning from him, and then he was like, y'all know what this is about now, and this is your responsibility to take this into the future. And then we're like, oh fuck. And that honestly too, at that point, that was probably like 5-6 years ago, and I remember thinking like, oh wow, this is so cool, this is so exciting to be a part of Jerry's lineage and legacy, like fuck yeah. But it's actually just like this, it's not a gift, it's a responsibility, you know. And like especially with Jerry in heaven, and like it's just like he left us this work because it's experientially fundamentally, and like you can sit down and watch all of his talks and never get it, and read all the books on fucking Buddhism in the world and not get it, like because it's about doing this. And like it's so crazy for me to see now like my ability to say like give an interview and not be like so led by like the bullshit questions of the interviewer trying to make me give some superficial answer about like how good I look or who I want to bang or whatever, like, and actually give me the skills to like to know that there's like this practice that we're actually delineating, or that there's something that we're actually talking about, and that there's this lineage that we're actually connecting everyone to. And then for Jerry, since it was so much about elevating the consciousness, like I just see that that's what's going on with this thing. And now have the opportunity to just like absolutely like socially engineer the culture of music in Canada in this fucked up bullshit settlement that's not even a real thing. Like the people who right now are controlling and engineering the conversation about why music exists are using it for such deeply self-centered purposes that we should be humiliating them. We should be making stuff being like, fuck the Arkells, they're complete fake. Like it's crazy to think of having dilettantes at this level. It's like historically unprecedented. The way in which that theft is going on. And so to me, it's like crazy to have an insight into that, and then like know that it has to do with every day changing and getting kind of heavier. And it was crazy too that as Jerry even got older, he just got so much more connected to the humanism of what he was talking about. And watching that evolution happen was like the craziest shit ever, because he was still able to really keep an element of discipline, like really, really robust discipline, but then just have the most endless gentleness and humanism for what was going on. And I watched people come in and out of there for brief periods of time and come out played heavy. And I still don't, I'm just like trying to understand that, I guess. And then for me too, because since like I've been sitting down and thinking about that being the intention behind a lot of what I'm doing, like that's the impetus for starting Wholesound. Then it's like, okay, well, I already know what's going on. I already know what I'm doing. We might as well start to bring some kind of form to these things that we know already do exist, right? And then so this is like why Kirsten and I are doing this. And because we're just driven by the intention, we don't know what to do. We don't know what like a workshop series even is.
Honest to God. Yeah, we don't know stuff. We're just rolling with it. But yeah, like there's that reason why. And then there's also the reason of just wanting to make sure that we can make money from stuff that we do. So yeah, there's like the really deep stuff, but then there's just the basic, like we want, you know, we're grown-ups, and so apparently when you grow up, you have to think of a thing to do, and this was a good thing. That's what we talked about too. We were just like, we need something to do. Like, we need to do something, create like a job too. So like, there's that. Yeah. But for me, it was like wanting to create something that I wish I had when I just wanted to sing, just wanted to make music. I didn't know a whole lot about it. I wish that I had something like Wholesound, you know, and I usually refer back to that when I'm thinking about ideas and things we can do. I think like, what would I have wanted done for me? Right. So that intention definitely guides us for sure.
I wish we had some I wish there was like a homework thing we had for next time. I'm not on that level at all yet, but just every time I think homework.
Homework is to elevate your consciousness.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like maybe even like a good homework thing would be like actually writing out the lists of fears, like a whole ass page, and then writing out like a whole ass page list of desires and whys and like reasons. And you just have to keep going until the list of whys is bigger than the list of fears.
Yeah. That's a cool idea. You just made that up. It's a cool idea.
That's a homework.
I think
The only thing there though that I'm wondering is like, I don't know, maybe it's like I could write out way more fears, but then it's like the whys just are just more powerful than the fears, even though there's just the one.
I know, and
Yeah.
also the reason I thought about that for this activity is even just after doing this whole thing today and thinking like maybe we do need some practice in just like coming up with like some lower level desires when it comes to like what if we could just make a list that had like fucking hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of like reasons why we do it, like, and honest to God, like it's just so interesting to me that the reasons we all brought up are like literally the most fundamentally existential things of life. Like can't like there are also some other reasons that are like I need to make money or I don't know, like, you know, like it's just like we really, it's heavy, like the way that we're all carrying music is very very heavy, and that's cool.
Mhm.
And but also like it's cool to I'd be curious to see like if you got tasked with just making a list that was so long and like exhaustively just full of filler. Like I'm curious to see if that was like a filler list of desires, like what good ones would come up on there that we didn't talk about today.
Yeah. Probably some really good stuff.
Yeah, because I'm almost less interested all of a sudden in creating like a compendium of the fears.
Mhm.
Because I feel like the same work can almost be done with a compendium of the desires. Compendium.
Yeah. I like that idea.
And human desires.
Why am I saying
I have no idea. I was like, wow, okay.
That's so nice.
That's the name of the podcast for sure.
That is so dumb.
But yeah, I think also an exercise could be like writing a bit of a script.
Oh yeah.
Like,
Oh, for a show.
yeah, like if you had 5 songs.
I love this.
If you had like 5 songs, coming up with interesting ways to introduce each song, or just a script, like look at the 5 songs, think of a story. Maybe you have to rejig the songs. Maybe it's like, oh, the story I'm telling, it'd be better to put this one here, like to come up with the list and then how you'll introduce them. Interesting ways outside of like, so for my next song, I'm gonna sing this, like, you know, because that's what we end up doing if we don't plan it. But like an interesting way is to like ask a question or something. Like, has anyone ever felt like whatever? Yeah, I have. And so one day I was home and I wrote a song, or, you know, and then at the end you could say, yeah, so once that song was written, whatever, like, you know, you can tell a story that way, or you can choose not to introduce it. You can even introduce the song mid-song. Like maybe you decide to do like a little musical break and say, yeah, so this next verse is like, maybe, you know, you could talk within it. Also introducing yourself, you got to put those in there. So usually I like to just sing a song, then after the first song, introduce myself, and then even decide where you'll say like your handles, like you can find me on Instagram here or there. So it's kind of like planned. And so like the talking kind of goes in there with the songs. So, you know, like you memorize your lyrics and also the story that goes with it. Even if you make up a fake story, nobody knows.
Mhm.
No one knows, just say it.
I love it.
That could be a little assignment, but it's like non-homework homework, like just ideas if you feel like doing something, but also
It's not homework, but you will all be required to present it next week's. And the next week is on preparation, so you know.
oh yeah, it is preparation.
Your own preparo.
Was it the idea management? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Idea management.
Yeah.
Like when you want to go write a grant or present something, and how to get all the stuff in your head organized so that you can share it.
Mm.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you guys so much.
Thanks.
So sweet.
It's great.
See you next week.
I feel like the ideas management stuff is pretty big. Like there's a lot that goes into it, but I know that over the years I've had to develop like different techniques and ways to just like keep this thing going. Like everything's just an idea and then you somehow have to like make it happen. And then I feel like as I do more and more things, the ball just is rolling and growing and growing. And then I feel like I've lost control of all the different sparks that fly around in my mind. And so then because of overwhelm, I find that I end up not really executing things properly or at all, you know, like because of being creative people, I find this is what happens. And so there are things that I've learned to do to kind of like not only help me to execute ideas, but to like keep track of all the moving parts when it comes to my ideas. And even just to like properly take advantage of an opportunity, or even like be able to identify whether or not I qualify for something. Like say there's something presented and I'm like, oh, I don't really know if I could, but if I have everything documented properly, I know that like I can do this. Or say I have this big idea, I look at this grant and it's like, could I apply for that? Like I'll know whether or not I can. And if you have an idea properly laid out, you can kind of mold it to fit into a grant. Or I don't even really recommend that, because I feel like we should keep our ideas as what they are, but you can kind of like maybe just choose a component of the idea. Because I find that's another thing I'll do is like, I'll look at a grant, and I don't want to make this about grants because like we don't need them to execute our ideas, right? But it's like, I could look at a grant and I could say, now my idea doesn't fit into this completely, but because it's organized, it's like, well, this part of it does. So I'll just apply for this part. And then you don't have to like limit yourself completely to squeeze into a grant, right? And there's something else that Nick, you had mentioned. You had mentioned about goals and how it's important to be able to divide things into segments to accomplish them.
Oh yeah, like
About that, like
yeah, like I also feel like this is kind of like an offshoot from that last exercise that we're talking about the intention thing. Where like the idea of these intentions is that they like kind of exist outside of time. like in a sense. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? Like it's like I want to feel good or something. Like that's the intention of doing the performance, or like I want to feel free. Like it's not like I want to feel free, you know, like there's no now, later, like you know what I mean? Like it's not like it's not like pinned into time, into the world in that way. And I feel like that's kind of what a goal is like the goal aspect of it is taking that like piece of intention, and then, and even again, like using this example, like I want to be free, you know, like I want to be these goals like look different when you phrase them in these, or like look in the time scales in these different ways. So like I want to be free in a year is a very different goal than I want to be free right now. Or like I want to I'm gonna be cheesy, like I want to have $1 million in a year. I want to have $1 million in a week. And I want to get like really great at music in 5 years. I want to get really great at music in 2 weeks. And I think a lot of the time when people think about goals and trying to build their projects, that we can see the bigger goals, but that it's a lot harder to actually see the smaller ones. And I feel like that's kind of one of the things that makes it difficult to build practice. Because obviously too, right? When I say something like, I want to get really great at music in the next 2 weeks, it's actually kind of cheesy. It doesn't really work like that. But the interesting thing is there's no, I want to get great at music in 5 years that doesn't involve like daily goals. And like most of my insight from this, I feel like comes like just directly from piano practice or instrument practice. Where I see a lot of people struggle is not being able to build small practice routines. Cause like there's no way to just like come to an instrument and pour a ton of time into it and walk out and it's just this different experience that you have with it. Like you're working with your physiology, you're working with going to sleep and waking up as a new person every day. Like you're working with memory, you're working with learning. It's like how do we come up with goals for things that you can't prescribe in one big chunk like that? Like for example, getting better at music. It's actually so complex. And then the reason I've been thinking about this specifically for this work is just like how I wake up every day in just this panic, you know, like this sweating panic that like everything's not working out and it's like you got to make more money. All this. I don't have any offers for gigs. It's like crisis all the time. Like, and there's no solution to that. Like, and it can feel really intimidating because like what we would want to do when we have a problem like that in this work we're doing is we'd want to solve it because we care about this shit. And honestly, sometimes the best work to do for me is to go and actually sit down at my piano and do something that I can do.
I think that just to comment on something you said, like there being no solution to that feeling of crisis, when we start to get into this idea management, we'll see that there is.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah.
Like there's so many ideas that we have that come to us that could solve a lot of our problems, but it's like we haven't really like articulated them in a clear way to see like like completely flesh them out to see what purpose they'll even serve in our lives if we do execute it, you know? Sometimes it, you know, so many solutions within us, but I know what you mean. Like there's no solution to like not feeling
Well,
that
and
human feeling.
I guess what I mean in there being the no solution part is that there's like for example, like I don't have any gigs next week or something. Like I can't just be panicked about that and all of a sudden gigs are going to show up next week. Or, and honestly, even too, with something like no gigs next week, I can't even be proactive about that and get a gig for myself next week. Like that ship has sailed. Like there's a few things where like there are literal boundaries, you know. I think a good example of one too is like I want to get better at the piano, or like I want to get better at singing. Like a literal boundary is you're not gonna wake up tomorrow with that. It's just like it's so hard that there are things in real life, because there are some things too that you can put your mind to and just sort out like that. And it's really interesting with these music goals too. I find that like one piece of it is that there is like a physiological hurdle that needs time. And so we need to actually have goals that like let us sit against this axis of time. And also too, Kirsten, I agree exactly, which is like there's no solution for that urgent thing that needs to be solved, but there are solutions. And like what I started to realize that they look like for me is honest to God daily practice. And like knowing that even with this ideas management thing, I'm trying to do this more for myself. Like just like setting smaller goals for the day. Like even like Jared, what you just said about writing that script in 15 minutes, like yo, 15 minutes of writing dedicated to your practice every day will turn into like an hour and a half every week, and 15 minutes can feel easy. And then also, Kirsten, back to this ideas management thing, making like a good list. And like this is where I feel like it would be wicked to hear what you have to say. Like making a really good list of that kind of shit, like a whole ass list that's so big that you can tackle for only 15 minutes a day or 10 minutes a day. Like, because that's how little itty bitty you made each piece that you're chewing on. Because again, too, for me, if I can know that I just did my job today, which was like, for me, it's like doing the 5-note scale variations across 4 keys that are related in the diminished chord. That's the exercise I gave myself. I could do it like 15 minutes. If I do that every day, and then I make like 2-3 exercises I do every day, even though I know I'm not getting those like big wins checking in, it these pieces are so smart. Practice is so smart. And honestly, this 15-minute practice thing, like my capacity is increasing all the time. And my panic is still there, but my capacity keeps increasing. And I'm witnessing my capacity increase. And like that, witnessing that is a win. It's a win that you can keep bringing back to the thing to be like, even though I'm panicking, even though I'm not solving all my problems, it is a little better today than it was because I'm keeping up this thing. And like my overall goal is set by my intention, and the smaller pieces of how I'm picking them away will meet this overall goal. So I can't even be worried about good or bad or the consequences of what's happening right now because I'm on a path.
Mhm. Mhm.
I feel like that's so interesting because I'm thinking about how like you set like an intention or a goal, and then you make practice that's set by that intention and goal, and then the practice works back into the intention and goal because you're making progress towards it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like letting the intention and the goal fuel smaller things. Because the scariest part about intention is, again, too, like, let's hear our intentions. I want to be free. That shit's so gigantic, so utterly gigantic that, like, what's it going to do? It's going to fuel an unrealistic goal. Like,
Mhm.
that's not how we're gonna do this.
Yeah, for real. All right, so like when I think of idea management, it's like having an idea and getting it to a place where you could tell anyone about it. You could take advantage of any opportunity that comes to support the idea. And like, I guess, have more confidence in your ability to execute the idea, if that makes sense. It sounds really simple, but when I have an idea, I just write who, what, where, when, why, and how. I just write that. And then I begin to fill them in. When I think of the who, right? Who is not like me, of course, me, but who is like any person I can think of that could help, or that, depending on the idea, let's have an example. Does anyone have an example of an idea? Maybe someone has an actual idea that we could like go through now.
I've been wanting to do like an arrangement of do y'all know the like classical piece called Bolero by the composer Maurice Ravel? It's like one of the first instances of like extreme repetition in music, at least in like white Euro music terms. And I've been wanting to do like a arrangement of it.
Okay, so we'll use that idea.
Okay.
I like it.
This arrangement, when we go into who, is it something you do independently, or are there people that could support it?
Probably like the other musicians that would perform, so performers.
Yeah, anybody, any human being you can think of. I mean, I guess human being, animal, whatever. Like, because depending, yeah, you don't know, like anyone involved with this, like that would need to maybe be contacted, or you could speak with, or, just anybody.
Like performers for sure. If I was gonna perform it, then like some kind of like live sound person, any kind of person that I need to contact about like rentals for equipment or anything like that. Probably like, because I don't really have the financial capacity to do something like this, I need to contact some kind of granting body or like just some way to secure funding for it. I'm trying to think, like, other than stuff that is just a part of life, it's hard to think of more, but
Okay.
the specificities of who's performing is like not really clear yet, but that would be something that we need to be.
But that's good, because then you'll know that you don't know. So
Right.
you'll know, like, hey, I don't know who's performing it, but like who, that would be like you, grant people, yeah, performers, maybe like engineers, is anybody that you can think of that could support it. Under the what section, it's like, what is it? Try to say it in one sentence, what you're doing. Maybe 2 sentences. Right? So I'm arranging this, how would you word it? So this is weird. So like in the what section, you want to be really specific, like what am I doing? Within the what, there's a little bit of a who, what, where, when, why, and how as well within the, because you're saying, I'm arranging this piece called Bolero that was performed by this person. that's what I'm doing. You could say, if location matters, you could say that like in the city of, like just exactly what you're doing. And then also under what do I need? Because sometimes you may need something, like again with the money, you could put the money. There might be equipment that you need to rent or buy. There might be, I need like, you would know the things you need, but sometimes with an idea, it's like, maybe you need some training. There could be an idea you have that it's like, I need a little bit of like information on these things, just anything you need that you do not have right now that you will need to get in order to execute this idea, right?
Mhm.
Does anyone have any questions or comments or anything? Okay, cool. So with where, yeah, that's pretty obvious where, but then like it could be more complex if it's a different idea. Because it could have several locations.
Mhm.
And then when, that's pretty basic as well. Why, that's really personal,
Mhm.
but it's good to know, because anytime you're ever telling anyone an idea, you want to know why, of course, like Nick spoke about that a lot earlier. And then the how, and that would go into what Nick was talking about with the goals, with setting small goals in order to get to the larger goal. Now, the how, sometimes I find if I'm writing out my ideas, the how, I'm like, I have no idea. And sometimes that ends up blank. But I do have an activity depending on the idea. So this is like a tangible, it's like an idea / goal that you have, right? Some ideas would have no goals. An idea could be like, I just want to build some type of like new coffee machine or something. It could be something that's like, it's like, I have no idea about that. So it's like, there's so much more. It's like, this is something that you could easily execute, right? But there's this thing one of my friends taught me called a backwards plan. And I've been using it ever since, and it like works like magic. So when writing a plan, we usually think like, okay, what am I going to do tomorrow? What am I going to do the next day? Like, what do I need to do? But if you write a backwards plan, what's the final destination? That's the first thing you write. So the final destination is what it could be. The performance of the piece could be the final destination, or the recording is released, or like whatever you would define as like the final thing to say, I'm done. That's the final thing. And then you ask yourself, what did I do before that? Before that, it could be as minute as like, I drove to the venue, or it could be more vague, like before the release, I had the project mastered. And then what did you do before mastering? Probably sat and talked with the engineer back and forth a few times to make sure the master was good. Cool. What'd you do before that? Probably mixing. And then before that, you probably, recording steps, but then what did you do before recording? Well, you had to set up the recording dates because you needed to, and then schedule the recording sessions with the musicians. Before that, you had to probably contact the musicians to make sure that they're available, or maybe you've already done that. Maybe it's like, you see what I'm getting at? You go backwards, and then eventually you'll get to today, and then you have everything. And it's kind of easier to think of it that way because you miss less details when you think of it backwards. It's interesting because even when editing papers, when I was in school, one of my teachers taught me this, to edit papers backwards, like to go to the last sentence and read it that way, because your brain skips over steps if it thinks it knows exactly what you wanted to say. So if you read backwards, then you can pick up on the mistakes and all the details. So when it comes to the how, I usually try to do a backwards plan. And that way, like, once you're done that, you should just have like this solid bomb ass idea with like with nothing missing. You could apply for any grant, like you have everything you need. What do I need? Again, you would think money, and then you could even go into more detail, like how much money do I need for what? But you already know what it's for because you already said everything you need. So like, you know everything about this idea. There's nothing that you don't know. So then it gets to the point where like you're able to take advantage of, say, something else comes along. Or you can even see like the other thing I wanted to share was, sorry, does anyone have any questions about that? Because I feel like I've said so much. Like, does anyone have questions or comments?
I use the backwards plan every time I have to drop someone off at the airport.
Really?
Like, departure time is this. It takes this. They want you there an hour before. It takes 40 minutes to get to the airport. I'm like, I have to leave here. This is when I leave. And to get to gigs on time too. Like, Nick needs 4 hours to get ready. I need 10 minutes. I gotta get there 4.5. Not just, sorry, Nick. I'm just kidding. That's
Yeah,
cool.
that's a no.
You don't do that anymore.
Uh,
Not you anymore, man.
I need a lot more. But now that I know, I'm like, I need like 8 hours. I need like 8 hours before everybody shows up, and then I need 4 hours from that point on.
And you know what? Without any judgment, do I add that to the time
You
needed?
just gotta add it. You gotta add it.
Yeah, it's just
Add that to the time.
It's a factor of loving a Sag, and that is just what we do.
Put a few hours in there. Invoice them.
Backwards plan, it works. It works.
It's awesome. It's a good step.
Another thing I do is, it seems unrelated, but not so much. I have a master CV that's like kind of a mess, but it's like, once you start doing so much stuff, like as artists, we just do stuff. And sometimes we sell ourselves short as well. So like, sometimes an opportunity will come, or there might be a grant that presents itself and you just assume you don't qualify because you're a musician and this is for whatever. But I feel like as musicians, we have to do so much other stuff that anytime you do anything, you write it on the CV. So anything, it could be unrelated to music, you just create another section. So like on mine, I have like television, theater, performance, collaborations. So there's just some random stuff. I have like photography because like I took pictures of my friend and then she ended up getting asked to be like in this magazine and she used those pictures. So then it's like, whoa, I'm a published photographer. So I can put that, but otherwise I just wouldn't. But just anything, like if you babysit somebody's kid and then you teach them how to like play some little thing on, just put it, anything, because like at the end of the day, sometimes there's opportunities that we would otherwise pass up that we qualify for. And when you do have an opportunity to apply for a grant, they always want a CV, they always want a bio. And how difficult is it to like sit and try and write a fresh bio for like a specific thing? So you want to just have like, if you wear hella hats, you want to just have it all written down, anything you've ever done. And then it helps. Like, it helps in the end when it comes to these ideas. Like, what can you do? Like, how can you contribute to executing this idea? You may not really give yourself credit for the things that you're able to do. Maybe you can just do the shit on your own and you have no idea. Because I mean, I'm like speaking to myself because this is how it is with me. Like, I just find that I get in where I fit in all the time and don't really give myself credit for the different skills that I do have. We all have so many skills. So that's a big thing with like managing our ideas, sometimes even just referring to that master CV, because people are not going to see this because like no one needs to know every single thing you've ever done. But even when referring to that, you may get ideas. Like you may look at your own CV and be like, oh, this person could probably do such and such. And it's you, but like you never would have thought it. So that's a huge thing that's helped me, just remembering every single thing I've ever done. And it helps to come up with the ideas. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have as of now to contribute to that. But does anyone have any comments, or does everything make sense? Does it feel helpful? Any questions?
The master CV one is so important. I think I wish somebody had like gotten me to start one like 20 years ago. Not 20 years ago, it would have been 12, but like, you know, like 10 years ago. Because it
Even
adds
like,
up and you do stuff and you forget and you're like, oh yeah, I did that last year. Or like, what? That qualifies as a thing on the CV. One person told me like, just have one going. Don't like sit there and like try to remember everything, but just have one. And then when you remember something, or when
You go
like a
in.
Facebook thing comes up, it's like, remember when this happened last year? Just like go and tap it in, Google Drive or whatever your apps are. Just add it as you go, rather than harassing yourself to remember and potentially falling into a memory hole. I don't know. That happens
right?
for everyone. Yeah, but
And
it's,
you
yeah,
can
it's so
keep
important.
things like quotes. Like if someone like messages you and says, oh my God, that show was amazing. Like you made me cry. It felt so good. Screenshot it and save it.
Right.
Because
It's a good
when it
one.
comes to writing your bios and everything, you have those like,
Yeah,
yeah.
unsolicited reviews for sure.
Yeah.
Grab those.
Mhm.
That's right. I never thought to take people's reviews, like personal accounts, to directly to me and use it as like material that would make me seem like a legitimate artist. But that's a really
It works though. Or like when you're writing bios, sometimes you can refer to like, oh, fans say that quote. This, like, you know, you can remember what people have said.
yeah.
That's another thing. You have to write new bios all the time because it's like for different purposes.
Mhm.
So it's good to just have all these things.
I've definitely started getting into that practice of screen capping every mention. Because also too, it's funny how hard it is to find like internet press a
True.
couple of months after it's happened, or anything like that, especially even if it's on social media. Like there can be like something really good said about you on social media and then it just disappears. And photos they're a lot easier, I find, to keep track of. I had like an interesting experience of getting to jury on like a grant cycle for some music grants, and it was really kind of, I mean, like that was a lot of the impetus for kind of what this whole talk was about, I think, because to me what was just like so clear was how tough it was for people to really answer the why on this list of like like a lot of people could figure out who the who was and like those kinds of things, but the why and the how, like, and it was just kind of interesting to see like how much, I guess, like that lack of intention made it almost impossible to jury somebody else's thing, because you're like kind of trying to get inside somebody's head to understand where they're at. Like the jury ultimately becomes the audience that you're trying to reach with, like when you're writing these kinds of like ideas, when we're like writing this idea stuff out, like who is it for, I guess, is kind of like my this other question that I kind of have, because like part of what I feel like I've been struggling with on this whole like I kind of touching back to what Raf was talking about, like all of these pieces that maybe don't necessarily have to do specifically with music. Like I don't really understand how to deal with the rejection aspect of it still. Like I just don't know what to, like I don't know how to understand it. I I put a lot of clarity into some grant applications recently, and I didn't get any of those grants because of reasons that are outside of my control, which is all good in a way. But like I don't, like straight up, I don't understand the, like I don't know. Like I've struggled so much with like how to, like I guess what do you do when you like have your idea sorted out for yourself but you can't find a place for it, and then there's that like discouragement.
Do you mean not being able to find a place for it like within the mainstream?
Or no, I just mean like you're trying to get so we're so like um or like when we're writing out our ideas management, and parts of the how require like either investment or a community partner or some kind of thing like that that just like doesn't come through. And so then the how is actually this list that like has these reliances on other people, and in fact on things that are so extra musical. Because like for me the problem is that I'm like being judged by juries who like uh to my estimation are just not really capable of doing the judgment that they're doing, because I see like how I see what's coming out the other end, and then I'm like, well, I just I and then I just don't know. Like I feel shitty talking about this kind of stuff sometimes because it sounds so like uh like narcissistic in a particular way, but I just like the rubric is so arbitrary, and it doesn't have to do with the practice. It doesn't have to do with like supporting people who have healthy practices. So then like we end up like I notice that people end up remorphing their practices to like fit these grant type things, which is what I feel like I spent the last 6 months doing. I got none of those. Like, so I'm like,
You can look over them as well. Like maybe you and I can sit and look over them and then see what we could maybe like change and resubmit. Sometimes it's a matter of like, for me anyway, sometimes I have two hows or like two what's, like I know what I'm doing and I know why I'm doing it, but then I don't have to tell them exactly everything. To be honest, I never do. It's like a little bit of a protective thing for me. That I'm not 100% transparent when I do my applications, because it saves me from feeling like it was really my full thing that didn't get funded. It's a little bit of a protection. I'm not fully honest ever. And like for real, some people might look at that and be like, oh, you're supposed to be. I'm not. I'm never going to take my actual dreams and say, here, like pick them apart. Hell no. I'll just, like, I say what I know they want to hear. After being on some juries, I'll say what needs to be said to get the money, but I'll never say what I really feel. Like, yeah, I always keep something to myself so that, yeah, like if I don't get funding, which that's happened sometimes, and I realized like it sucks. It sucks. So then if you're a little bit, guarded with the actual how. So the how, sometimes also like you can think of like a how that you would apply with, and then a how that you'll do yourself that might take a bit longer. It might be pulling on different resources, but maybe if you know that there's like in your back pocket, there are ways to accomplish the goal on your own that might soften the blow a little bit too, you know?
Yeah,
But it's
that's
still
kind of,
like, it still just sucks, honestly, because like the stuff that gets funded, it's like the same shit all the time, and it becomes frustrating.
yeah. And I mean, for me, I still feel like this idea is like, because you and I have been talking about this stuff for a while, like, I feel like this kind of way of thinking is actually really, really helpful regardless, like just so that you can delineate all of the own of like your aspects of how you have to do your project, because this is just truly what a project is in project management. And for me, like all I found myself doing was just writing granting and like writing my reliance on other people out of my projects, because I'm actually sick of wasting my time on it. And like I don't necessarily think that that is like the most robust way to work, but it is definitely something that I found works for me. um and it's also kind of like an interesting aspect of being able to come up with these lists, or like being able to make explicit what you need to do to get the thing done. Because for me too, a lot of the thing that I'm struggling with the grants is like you have to come up with like a secondary, like they always have their own objectives, and then you like wiggle your project to fit their objective, and then that project doesn't even end up happening, and then everything just got pushed back. And like um yeah, just like trying to, because it's obviously so important, like such an important part of the future, being able to like put these works into words and like have clarity about it and then share the work. But I find it so like it can be such a difficult and distracting part of the music work, you know, like
Yeah, that's why it's nice to get others to help you write the grants. And then once you have like, you have your master CV, you have all your bios, you have this idea fleshed out this way. Sometimes having someone else's eyes, they can be more objective and kind of take the, I mean, not that application shouldn't have feelings, like, because we, like, depending on actually the organization, because some of them prefer this and some don't, but I guess it's just like research. We need to know. We need to know who wants what, but it's like sometimes it's good to just take yourself out of it. Like once the idea is on paper, like that's all it is. It's just this thing and I'm attempting to get money, but it doesn't matter because the plan is there, the idea is there, and you'll make it happen in your life. It's just a matter of if they'll help you or not. Sometimes even like writing a bigger plan, having a bigger idea, and this thing you're applying for is just a tiny part of the grand scheme, that might help maybe, like it's happening regardless, and then they're just helping with the component. It is really tough though, like it's really shitty, and like there have been times where I just didn't bother applying for grants because I just don't even feel like putting in energy that may go nowhere, you know? So I
yeah,
get
like
it. I get it. Like I've
of
just,
of the energy that I expended in the last 2 years, it has been the most misplaced energy that I've spent. And again, I'm not trying to say this to dissuade anybody from doing it at all. And I feel like this is like the epilogue of anything that would be like a conversation about this. But this is why I'm like, I just like, I I feel like there is a element missing from this conversation about the grant thing. Like when I watch it happen elsewhere, which is just like how many folks are missing out on like it on like the benefits from those systems, and actually just like how the way that they're set up they're so fundamentally discouraging. And then just like being able to build, like I feel like, because again too, that's where Jerry really ended up coming in and helping me out, is like being able to build uh like things connected to practice where you don't need anything other than yourself. um and just having like at least a few things like that kind of at the base.
Mm.
that we can have that help to deal with like the panic and just like all of these day-to-day things. And then what we're trying to do is build these really complex infrastructures, like these grants, like these bands, like all of this stuff upon the foundation that is ultimately our practice. And so yeah, it's just interesting. Those things are very, very, very heavy on the foundation, you know, of whatever the practice is. And I find it really fun. Like, it's interesting. I would love to have insight on it. I still feel so on the outside.
Hannah gave me some good advice not too long ago. I also share a crippling fear of rejection via Canada Council specifically. Having applied for grants and not gotten them, and like paid somebody to write them for me and still not gotten them. I'm just like, what? What? And so I've been attempting again to write and apply for touring funding, because I bought a ticket. It's like, it's gonna happen no matter what, but like if I don't get funding, I'm just gonna lose a bunch of money doing my work, which feels insane also, but it's part of the life. But Hannah gave me this sound advice of like, because this work is so, sometimes we feel it's marginal to our actual work, our practice, the music itself. It's like we also have to be this grant writer and like advocate for ourselves, and like, you know, how you have to know how to talk about your artwork, and like that's a skill. And it was just the advice that if you set yourself up to do like an hour of admin work a day, and then an hour of practice a day, or even less time, you know, like whatever the time interval works for you, but just to create it and treat it as part of the practice that could assuage some of those fears just by doing it a little bit every day. It's helped. Sometimes I don't do it, it's fine. Some days I do, and I get a little bit further on the application, and it feels like there's a satisfaction to it because I put an effort in. But yeah, the little bit a day, instead of like, I don't know, doing it all in one day or trying to do it, cram it at the end or something like that, is helpful for me. But it, you know, it doesn't completely alleviate the fear that I'm not going to get it and I'm going to be financially destroyed. But
I think the other thing is too is being able to accept help, because like I don't know, we all have very many things to offer, and like I don't know, like it's just like it's awesome that Kirsten just offered to like help look over an application sometime, and that could be like very helpful. And like yeah, I don't know, we can all help each other.
Yeah, I've never gotten like a grant when I didn't have someone, like a friend, look it over first. The only one that I've ever gotten was like one where me and my partner were like helping each other through the whole thing, and then we both ended up getting it, which was awesome. But since then I've just been trying to do them by myself, which is stupid. Just because it's like impossible to tell somebody like what's going on up here, you know? So like if it's your friend and they know you, they kind of know what's going on up there, and they're also reading it, but they're not filling in those blanks for you, you know, like you would when you're reading your own thing. Yeah, it's tough. I think, Nick, I think I just got the same rejection letter over the weekend, so this is fresh in my mind for sure. But also something that I think is like awesome, and it's like what I would like strive for with my projects is like something, Kirsten, that you said earlier, was like thinking about like grants as part of like ideas management, where it's like sometimes I'll open up a grant and be like, okay, like what do I want to do to get this amount of money, you know, like what's a way for me to get this money, instead of like, oh, I would love to do this, oh, and there's this thing that's going on, like thinking about ideas as separate and like the ultimate most important thing, and then the grants as like ways for that to happen. And that's just one way to make something happen. It doesn't have to be that way. It's pretty much just a bunch of money that you get from like the colonial state, right? So it's like one way to get the money, but there's other ways, I guess.
Yeah. It's the rejection thing. Yeah, it does suck. It does hurt. It's just like, just thinking of it like that. Like it's just a part of the grand scheme, right? And it's just one way, like you said, to make it happen. And then also, like I said, it really helps to keep some of it to yourself. It really helps to not lay it all out there. Just tell them the things they need to know and just move on, you know?
Right, because it's like you're not really trying to convince them of what's actually going on. You're just trying to convince them to give you money. So it's like, say what you need to say to get the money.
Yep.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And be as honest as you can so that you can keep it.
Yes.
Mm.
We'll be able to. Circumstances, things happen. Whoops, this happened and I had to do this and then I had to do that. Like there's always just you always explain everything and you can make everything work. But I think it gives me a feeling of control. I don't feel out of control if I don't just lay it all out there. Right? And like, yeah, the project will stay generally the same. Like I'll do the same thing. But I'll give them the highlights, what I plan to do, enough so that they're excited about it. You know, like if I'm on a jury, I read the first paragraph and I know if I think they should have the money or not, because I either think it's an exciting, good project or not. And I think usually people are like that, you know? Yeah, so it's just like, if you're excited about it and you tell them and it's interesting enough. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's really tough. This whole grant thing is so tough. I've never done crowdfunding. Has anyone ever done that?
Although it is something that I'm thinking about more and more.
Yeah, do you want to try it? Maybe we should try and then report back, see how it
Yeah,
goes.
no,
It's
honestly.
Yeah, let's try something.
Yeah, like I feel like the way that I support my life is similar-ish to crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Does a gig at Gus's pub count as crowdfunding?
Well, and also too, just
Yeah.
like even just thinking about the sense like of like any Bandcamp sale I've ever made. Like it's just somebody that wants to support your thing. Like it's literally Patreon. You know, and it's kind of interesting to just think about like how many small pieces can kind of come together to make a pretty sizable piece. Especially because I was looking at those factor grants too, and like the limits are like $2,000 and stuff like that. Like where yeah, like crowdfunding $2,000 can happen pretty quickly in a particular way. And it is interesting too, because like so much of the way that the working happens in Canada, I guess, like is connected to these like these jobs, like these big job infrastructures where like people get paid to get connected to it. And yeah, like even as somebody who's always struggled to find jobs, like I don't get like, you know, like just like the applying for things and then rejection thing has like been a pretty big part of my professional life. And then it's cool too, because even though I feel that way, like I still feel like I've been able to succeed a lot. And it's cool that I think that they like, and I like part of where the resonance of this whole kind of work I think is coming from is that like this like being able to make these ideas explicit and to make all of these pieces explicit and be able to hand them off to somebody and have a conversation about them and like edit these ideas and like get and like sort of move towards clarity in why we're doing what we're doing. Like I guess for me that's like the best I can get with my own way that I deal with the constant regret, like rejection crushing aspect of it, is like only through there's a lot of things in the how that will always be in the how that you actually can't go and look up online, and the only way to answer the how is through experience. And that's like just a really intense part of that part of the list of the how, is there'll be all kinds of things that you'll probably just have to highlight and you'll have to do them before you really know how to do them right. And like I just think being like kind of like being able to like gauge the difficulty level of different parts of your list of things that need to get done, I think can be like really helpful and really important. And being able to like build these backwards plans and stuff. And I feel like I wonder, like I don't know exactly how to do this, but being able to do like risk assessment of our plans or something, you know, like I feel like that's kind of like a next step
Risk
that I'm wondering.
So to like what, can you explain a little more?
Like the likelihood that like a likelihood of an idea actually being able to make it from the inception point to the completion point.
Right.
And then like being able to like gauge the amount of risk in a project to see like whether it needs to continue to be cooked or it's like ready to actually move on to the next
Right. I wonder how to gauge that.
phase.
I think there's probably a way, like once we, like maybe we could take an idea on our own and like flesh it out and then see maybe if there's things in the plan that give us that fear. Like maybe those are things that involve a certain level of risk and then we can start there, you know. Do you have an example of maybe something that you felt was too risky so you threw it away? Like
No, but I mostly am just trying to gauge like now after spending so many months, like because so for example, like applying for grants that are like project related, and then and only being able to shoot so many shots. And then there's so many different possible projects. So being able to know how to like pick the one that has like the least, that is like the least risky or like the least likely to just get not, that like doesn't have the clarity required to move forward, I guess is like kind of the way that I'm seeing it.
I think maybe let me look at some of the grants that
Sorry, Hannah, did you have something?
Yeah, I was gonna suggest oftentimes just reach out to a program officer. Just be like, hey, I have these two ideas. I'm looking to apply to get support with my practice and this next deadline. I'm considering applying for this or for this, like both are projects that I'll be carrying, and then see what they recommend. Because like, I don't know, I think that that's a thing too. People are often too intimidated to reach out to a program officer, or they think that that might be like detrimental to your application somehow, or they're just like nervous about some kind of, I don't know, they're nervous about doing something wrong with a program officer or something. So people don't like fully utilize them, but like they're there to oversee that program and like they're hired to help you, right? Like their whole job is to help you get the money. Like that's what their job is. And yeah, so I would say just reach out to like the program officer. Yeah, or like talk to a friend and show the ideas, like talk to Kirsten or talk to me. And just be like, what do you think? Like if we have experience with one of those certain programs that you're applying to or something.
Well, I guess also even what I would mean more specifically would be like music. And then like because a lot of it is like they're like selecting the projects based upon the music that's submitted. And in those cases it's kind of like because like in projects where there's like a feasibility, like the only thing that differentiates all the projects in the project pool is the quality of the music itself, then like the decision is just being made upon that. And then I'm kind of like, or honestly even it coming down to the pot to like some of the grants I feel like I'm applying for are riskier grants because they don't have like program officers and stuff. And like even just being able to know that like it could be less risky to apply to Canada Council or at Canada Arts Council, or I don't know, like one of those kinds of things, like because even that kind of advice isn't like the kind of stuff that I feel like I fully have internalized yet. And then I'm like not really applying for the right stuff still.
Right. There's always an officer though. There's always a person or people behind the thing that gives you money. And they've created that thing to be able to give money to artists. So.
I just, the last one I applied to did, it was like it was for like a project and they were like applying with commissions.
Yeah, I think, are you talking
you know
about
what I'm talking about? Yeah, like the TTC
what?
project.
Yeah.
And then I was like, fuck, like I'm gonna put a bunch of time into working on this application, even though it's kind of like this black box.
Yeah.
That
it
like
was a bit weird in general because it was like advertised so hard on like Instagram. And then when I handed in my thing, it was just like a Google form and it felt really like fake. Oh, and then like there's only 20 people who got it out of, did you see how many people did it? Like hundreds of people submitted. So that's like a very high risk.
That's what I mean. Yeah. And like not even being able to parse that, like that's a high risk thing to do. And like like I just didn't, you know what I mean? Like that's the kinds of things that I feel like I've learned in the last year is like applying to these theater companies for these theater company project grants and shit. Like it's like, those are riskier, I believe, at this point than applying to Canada Council.
Yeah.
And
I feel like Canada Council it feels random, kind of, you know? But they must give out more than 20 for every grant, you know? So I think I know what you're saying. Yeah.
And like, how do I like even like if I'm just like a random musician getting started, right? And I like see there's this constellation of options for me in terms of like all these things I can apply to. I'm like, oh my God, which one am I going to apply to? Like being able to have like some kind of like some kind of a gauge of like I don't know how to word it, like which ones could be possibly more likely than other ones.
Which ones like if
knowing
sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah,
yeah, just like
usually what I do when I'm working with like clients, like grant clients that I work with, it's usually a kind of first step is like, getting to understand their needs and their practice. And then we create a calendar that has the deadlines of kind of annual grants that are applicable. And I think that that's kind of a nice place to start because then you can kind of visualize when things are happening. You know, you can be like, okay, like with like, I do visual art and like I'm going to apply to this like provincial grant at this time. Then there's another provincial grant that will like support my practice at this time. We do just like just map the year with the deadlines as a place to start. Rather than like applying for these random things, maybe it's like start with this structure or something.
I have something like that I can just like send to you, Nick. And it's not like comprehensive at all. I think it only has like 6 organizations on it, but it's probably helpful.
I'd
And even just like
to,
maybe start
like, if
with
we
like
maybe
2 organizations or something, like, so it's not like a giant amount too, you know?
Mhm.
Cool,
Yeah, totally. I mean, like those are
You
all
wanna
just
send
like,
it like to me too? I would love that. I'd like to see.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
yeah, it's all like, and I mean, this is kind of just what I mean by that experience piece as well, and like why I appreciate the conversations like in these ways, because like there's so many pieces that are just like the minutia, the details of each step that we go along, and like you don't get that information without the experience, you know. And like for me, I'm like these are slow steps for me because I decided early on that I was going to try to figure out a way to do it by myself, which had like certain particular benefits and particular curses. And there's no good reason to like not take advantage of these kinds of things. And like again, these it's like for me, I didn't learn how to draw. I still don't know how to like leaving like certain kinds of things, like the earlier you can get to them, like the earlier you can get to making this master CV for yourself, like the earlier you can get on the train of the organization of having these calendars and like hitting these kinds of deadlines, it like clearly helps because it's like a longer process of getting the experience before the like wins kind of really start coming together. um Even if just to like build a way to like meter your own expectations, because I guess I feel for me that's probably been the hardest part of applications, uh is being able to like just meter your own for me is just being able to meter my own expectations with them, of being able to like I don't know, like not get too uh I don't even know like how to like finish that phrase. Just like it's just hard to to like have expectation, which is obviously what we have when we work towards particular things, and there's just so much uncertainty and all of these different aspects of what we do in music, and so it's definitely tough, like